Every time you open a website, something incredible happens behind the scenes. You type a URL like google.com, press enter, and within milliseconds, an entire web page appears on your screen. But have you ever wondered what actually happens during those few milliseconds? How does your computer find the correct server? How does the browser build the web page? And what role do technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript play? In this video, we're going to break down exactly how the web works, step by step, in a way that every beginner can understand. Now, before we understand how the web works, we need to know what is a web, right? So, web or www, that is World Wide Web, is a system of interconnected web pages and websites that you can access over the internet using a browser. So, before we fully understand this statement, we need to understand the meanings of different terms used in this sentence, right? Like web pages, websites, internet, and browser. So, let's start with web page. So, what is a web page? It is a single page inside a website. If you think of a home page of youtube.com, the entire home page is a single page. The definition also says inside a website. So, what is a website now? So, it is a collection of related web pages under one domain. So, the web pages that we have, the collection of those, okay, that is called as website. So, if you see the example, the youtube.com, it's a website. So, in this website, we have multiple single pages like the home page, history, subscription, podcasts, all these single pages together, their collection is called as website. Okay, in simple words, you can think of a website as a big book, and individual pages inside that book is called as a web page. So moving on, we have internet. So what is internet? It is biggest network connecting millions of networks together. So here it's a network of networks basically. Now we need to know what is this network. So network is a group of connected devices, okay, or computers that can share data. Example, in your home you have Wi-Fi. So to that Wi-Fi, your phone, laptop, smart TV, all are connected. So that becomes a network. So similarly, when you have multiple networks like that, it forms a internet. Next we have browser. So browser is basically an application via which you can open and view websites. You can interact with it as well. Now that the statement of www makes sense, here is another catchy phrase. A system of interconnected web pages and websites, right? To understand this better, we need to know where this system of interconnected web pages and websites is stored, right? It has to be present somewhere. We need to understand that where it is placed, where it is stored. So that is where web server comes into picture. So what is a web server? It is a powerful computer that stores websites and sends them to your browser. So it is a computer that stores these websites and web pages. Okay, so whenever you request for one, it will return that. So whenever you type, right, using your device like laptop or phone, that is called as client. So when you open a website, your device, that is the client, it requests information from a server, and the server responds back with the website content like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, images, and data. But all of this happens only after you type something in the browser. So what exactly are you typing? When you type something like this on the address bar of a browser, you're actually entering a URL. URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator. In simple words, it's the address of a resource on the internet. Let's break this down. A typical URL has three main parts. First, the HTTPS, that is protocol, We'll learn more about this in the upcoming videos. Okay, it defines how communication should happen. Second, the domain name. Here, youtube.com, which identifies the website. And third, the specific path, like /page, okay, which points to a particular page or resource on that site. So the URL tells the browser exactly what protocol to use, where to go, and what resource to fetch. Now that you have entered the URL and the URL tells the browser what to do, the next step is to understand the browser's job. The browser plays a crucial role in displaying websites. It performs two major tasks. First, it sends the request to server. Second, it receives the responses and converts them into a visible web page. It is basically responsible for reading HTML and converting it into a visible web page. And that is why HTML is the foundation of web development. Now that we understand the browser's job and that a URL tells the browser the protocol, domain, and path, there's still one problem. When you type a URL in the address bar, the browser still doesn't know where that website actually lives. So, the big question is, how does your computer find youtube.com? Okay, because servers don't understand names like youtube.com. Okay, they use something called as IP addresses. IP stands for Internet Protocol. It is like a phone number for a computer. It's obviously unique number. Example is something like this. It is an IPv4 address, okay, which is made up of 4 numbers separated by dots. Each number represents 8 bits. So a full IPv4 address is 32 bits long. Okay, so when you type youtube.com, your browser contacts a system called DNS. Now, DNS stands for Domain Name System. Okay, you can think of DNS like a phone book. So, this phone book has the addresses, unique addresses, that is IP address. Okay, so what the DNS does is it takes the domain name from browser like youtube.com and it returns the IP address of the server where that website is hosted. Okay, so this is how it works. If you see the image, it explains the process. Along with that, there is something called as DNS cache. Okay, a DNS cache, it's a temporary memory where your computer or browser stores previously looked up IP addresses of websites. Okay, so your browser might already have visited that site. So next time when you visit the same website, it does not go to the DNS, actual DNS. It checks in the local cache, that is DNS cache. So if it finds the IP address there, it will skip the actual call to the DNS to increase the speed, to make the website load faster. So that is how this process works. Now that we understand how DNS works, the next step is to look at the request response cycle. This is the process where the browser sends a request to the server processes it and then sends the website back to the browser. Let's see how this whole process works. Okay, it begins when a user types a URL into the browser's address bar. The URL informs the browser which protocol to use, which domain to reach, and which specific resource or path needs to be fetched. Correct. This much we know so far. So we have browser, server, DNS, and its cache. Okay. So first, the browser will make a call to DNS asking for the IP address. Okay. So firstly, it will check in the local cache. If it is present in the local cache, then it returns the IP address to the browser. If it is not present in the local cache, then the call is made to the actual DNS from which the browser retrieves the IP address. Next step is the TCP connection. This is new topic. Okay, TCP stands for Transmission Control Protocol. It is a communication protocol used on the internet to ensure that data is sent reliably and in the correct order between a browser and a server. Okay, once the browser gets the IP address, it establishes a TCP connection with the server. Okay, this happens through a three-way handshake. It is called handshake because it is similar to how two people shake hands to confirm they are ready to interact. Okay, so the first step is the browser. Okay, it sends a message to the server saying, I want to start a connection. Okay, it is called SYN, short for synchronize. Now the server responds to the browser acknowledging the request saying that it is ready. SYN hyphen ACK, short for synchronize acknowledged. Okay, then again the third step is the browser confirms the connection. The browser acknowledges it. Okay, so this is how the TCP connection is established between the browser and server. Okay, the next step involves the request, the HTTP or HTTPS request. Now the browser sends, okay, this request, HTTP or HTTP request to the server, HTTPS request, to the server asking for the web page or resource. Okay, now the server responds. Okay, first it processes the request and then it sends back a response which includes HTML, CSS, JavaScript and metadata that includes assets like images, icons, documents and other resources. Okay, so this entire process happens in milliseconds, and this request response between browser and server happens continuously till the browser gets all the web pages required. That is why it is called cycle. So this is it about the request response cycle. Now here's something that surprises many beginners. Most people think that when you open a website, the server sends a fully designed web page, exactly the way you see it on the screen. But that's actually not what happens. In reality, the server mostly sends text-based files. The most important one is HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It tells the browser what content should appear on the page, things like headings, paragraphs, images, buttons, and links. Next comes CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. CSS controls how the page looks, the colors, fonts, spacing, layout, and overall design. And finally, there is JavaScript. JavaScript controls how the web page behaves. It adds interactivity, things like animation, form validation, drop-down menu, and dynamic content updates. We'll learn more about this in the upcoming videos. So, when your browser receives these files, it combines them together and builds the web page you see on your screen. And that is why HTML, CSS and JavaScript are considered as the three core technologies of web. So let's quickly summarize the entire process. When you type a website URL, first the browser reads the URL, then DNS converts the domain name into an IP address, the browser sends a request to the server responds with HTML, CSS and JavaScript, and finally the browser renders the web page. If you're starting your web development journey, understanding this process is extremely important because everything in web development, that is front end, back end and APIs, builds on these core concepts. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Practical Full Stack for more practical programming content. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.